Number 8. So, shall we roll your intro?
Sure, roll the intro.
All right, let's roll it.
This segment has been sponsored by the Ubuntu Room. Come join Dana Sardano as she offers life-changing advice that will affect the spiritual, emotional, and physical aspects of your being. Within her easily available writings, you will find the solution you need for your problems. Tune in to the Ubuntu Room on the Brooklyn Cafe Show.
Hi, my name is Dana Sardano, and this is the Ubuntu Room. I am so glad you're here. Thank you for joining me. So we are on the decline. We are in Rec 8, so thank you for sticking with us. Recommandment 8 is about listening to our bodies. We have a physical guidance system, and it works in concert with our emotional guidance system. And as this conversation progresses, we will likely bring it back to the conversation we were having about feeling energy. But before we get into Rec 8, I always like to reflect on the previous recommandment. After we have an episode of book club, it gives me time to think about these things. And I just want to reflect on the last 2 recommandments. So Rec 6, we talked about attachment. And the last recommandment, we talked about awareness and willingness. I shall not refute the truth and deny the solution to that truth. And I have to share something. We're going to take a little journey. Come with. But we're going to take a little bit of journey here before we get back to Rec 8. So when we talked about attachment, Dawn brought up the situation I had on my mother's deathbed, how I chose not to go and make peace with my mother. Instead, I chose to make peace on my own. And she shared that her sister had a similar circumstances, but chose the opposite, chose to go and make peace. And when I was talking about it, and this brings us into Rec 7, I understood that my mother was not only not aware, but she was not willing to come in peace, if you will. And my not going was an act of self-preservation. And then she passed, and again, I had to, work through another whole layer of forgiveness. And I always joke how I have forgiven my mother, 50-something times, and I forgave my father once, and it stuck. And the difference between the two, you'll see where I'm going here in a second. The difference between the two is my father came hat in hand. He came with an awareness and he came with a willingness. Again, Rec 7. Whereas my mother was still very, very angry and bitter, and she took that to the grave. So much so that my mother passed in 2017. Back in 2018, I was with a friend of mine, brilliant aura reader, medium, the whole 9. And in conversation with her, my mother was busting through the doors because she had something to say, and she was still angry, and she was aggressive and insulting through this medium. And we don't think of that. Like, we think people pass and they're like, they're with the light, they're with the angels, and they come in peace. No, my mother was still angry, and she still wanted to let me know about it. Actually validating what I knew and why I didn't go to her on her deathbed. Fast forward a couple years, we were in the gallery with our friend Michelle Galinsky. Shout out, Michelle. But we were with Michelle, and my mother came through again. Again, still angry, not as, but still angry, basically saying straight out, I always liked your brother better. So still carried that bitterness, still was unwilling to make amends. In the 3rd book of the trilogy, You've Cracked the Code, The Woo Is You, I talk about how about a year or so ago, I finally had full acceptance and forgiveness. And in that, through another friend of mine, I know a lot of weirdos, through another friend of mine, my friend, channeled my mother's ultimate resignation and sadness, and it was the first act of contrition I saw from her in her entire life, but especially since her passing, and that was that ultimate forgiveness. Why am I sharing this with you? Because yesterday, out of the blue, and I think in these conversations about my mother and my father and all of these things, I think there was a bit of poking of the bear, because yesterday I got a phone call from Wendy, and Wendy was like, Dana, your mother showed up. I have a message from her, and I want to pass it on to you. And my mother came through for the first time, not only in her entire life, but since she passed in 2017, humbly and with love in her heart and wanted, basically with an olive branch, and also wanted to share a component that in her final years she was suffering from dementia, and that was part of her anger and her aggression towards me, something that I wouldn't have known. My mother, and this will lead into our conversation about listening to our body's messages, my mother carried a lot of anger and a lot of pain that she didn't resolve through her entire life. And she tried to control everything. It was one of her coping mechanisms. Again, we talk about this through all the Recommandments. And as a result, her brain responded in kind. And as she got older, dementia kicked in because of that need to control, that pain that she carried. You know, I often kind of half joke that we are all caricatures of our out of our dysfunction as we get older. So if there's things about us that we haven't reconciled as we get older, it gets more severe, more severe, more severe, to the point that it's almost becomes a caricature. Also, it becomes severe illness. It becomes these maladies. And if we're not paying attention to our emotional and physical ills when we're younger and we don't reconcile them, they become full blown. And my mother not only passed with these incredible deficiencies, incredible dysfunction, but she took it to the other side and was still working on it in the other side till ultimately in our years, 8 years later, right? Do the math, 9 years later, is she finally in that direction of reconciling it. So I thought that was just a really, really interesting thing, an interesting new thing that came up, and I wanted to share it with you, as personal as it is. And I would love to hear Wendy chime in, because Wendy's the one that I got an audio. I get out of the chiropractor yesterday, and she's like, Dana, I got a message from your mother. So I thought you might want to hear it from the horse's mouth.
Thank you very much. Sorry, almost forgot that. Thanks very much. That was really interesting because I was just making the bed. I was just going about my business, getting, settled, and then I was listening to a clip about how music is so important and how it helps people who have dementia and that kind of thing. And that was the load in. She popped in very, very as you said, sheepishly.
Humbly,
yeah,
right?
very
Sheepishly.
humbly. She came in, she was dressed very nicely. She says, Dana's written about all the things, we know all the different stories, but there's a component that she didn't know about. The part of my anger, part of my frustration was I'm used to controlling everything, and now in this state of dementia, or this beginning of this state, I was not able to carry forth the image that I portrayed. And I was just going to say that the mask that I had was slipping off, and trying to make sense of it. And for somebody who's always had everything buttoned down and all, all in control and all in order and all of these things, now I can't even keep it together. So she just came forward like, I'd like for you to know that this does not negate the things that I did, and I'm still coming to terms with that. But I'm also letting you know that I was also dealing with this thing. It was very difficult because I could no longer control the narrative. Now people were seeing the true me. And I completely lost my stuff because I never wanted anybody to fully see me. I was not able to, not in this lifetime, not in my next one neither. Yeah, so she's not gonna flex it as hard as she did in this, but she's like, I still gotta learn something. I still don't see it fully.
So she has to come into
She has to come in.
physicality in order to
And do it again.
learn those lessons.
Yeah, more
that-
fully.
More fully.
And to
what do
fully-
you think about that? This is pretty interesting stuff.
I think it's because as you're telling the story, I'm thinking your mom had dementia.
Yeah, but my point was, when I was talking about how these things, as we get older, we become caricatures, she didn't always have dementia.
Of course.
So the dementia was a result of her being so out of balance, having to control things, not reconciling whatever imbalances,
Controlling
pains,
her own
traumas,
narrative.
Controlling her own
I think they control their own narrative. I was this way, and now I'm going to continue to be this way because I'm going to blame somebody else.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a lot of outward blame
Yes.
is what I think
1000%.
happens.
Yes.
And then it's us having to, I had this conversation with Freddie this morning. I'm watching the change of your parents and ultimately knowing why it's changing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it hurts any less,
Yes.
even though logically it's because of whatever the circumstances. But it doesn't mean when those things roll off their tongue, it doesn't jab you hard like a
it
knife.
doesn't
Oh, my
not
goodness,
sting.
yes.
Yeah.
Right? We had this conversation this morning. You said to me, as long as it doesn't affect me, and I can keep it compartmentalized. And I said, it doesn't until it does. He goes, well, don't let the does. Well, it's hard because when those jabs come, it takes you back to, but this is my parent, sibling, whatever it is. It takes you back to, but this is my mother. How could that come out of your mouth?
Yes.
When you know, I'm only trying to do the best I can do for you. Now, if I was trying not to do, then I could understand it. But I'm really only trying, we're only trying to give her the best life that we think is possible.
Yeah, but I went through
But she's got the control.
But I went through that with my parents as well.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you know, it's like the army. They pay their dues. What they say to me is not going to change my life. Is it hurtful? Okay.
How was your relationship with your parents before any kind of
The
mental?
best. They were my best friends.
And there's a difference. There's a difference because my relationship with my mother was always tenuous at best. And so there's this person that never really liked me, and it was very obvious. And then as it got progressively worse, it turned into resentment and hatred. And so it's not like, and again, I think it's different kinds of pains. If there was great love, and then I'll use my mother-in-law as a perfect example. I love her so much. Rob's mother, asocera, which is like an offensive mother-in-law term in Italian. But when I go, I'm like, asocera, love her, love her. And she is starting to go down that road. And I have more compassion for her because there's a relationship. But if the relationship is already strained, it's harder to have compassion because there's already dissonance in that relationship. You know what I mean? So I can see how you can easily be forgiving. But if they never liked you, then, you know, it's owie.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard, especially mother-daughter. I think.
But I find it interesting that your mom was the same way on the other side because I would think, because I know my dad at the end was not my dad cognitively.
Right.
So I would think and I would hope that when he passes to the other side, he's like back to where he was, like this all loving, caring, wonderful dad, pediatrician, grandfather. He would not hold on to any of that stuff. Now, I don't know because I don't speak to him like that on the other side. But I would think he would go back to the younger, more perfected piece of who you are.
One would think so, but
right?
we all have facets of our personality. So if there's a little bit of a deficit there and that's what he came to learn or unlearn and he didn't, then it's going to come full circle. Yes, he's going to be all these wonderful things and beautiful things, but in this one aspect or these two aspects, that's where the Achilles heel is.
So if he comes yelling at you tonight, so
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm like waiting for him
Dad.
to show up.
Yep. He's removed. He's staying behind. He's kind of like, He's giving me the So tell me more. He's just, I feel like he's a person who would take in as much info to later be able to use it strategically.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you
strategically.
are good with your words.
Yeah, you saw that, right?
Yeah, strategically.
Yeah, he was very strategic and precise. My mom has a little bit of that. She knows when. She's changed a little bit, but she knew how to position herself, when to use what and how.
Yeah. So back to what we were initially saying, and I am not a doctor. I'm not claiming to be a scientist doctor. Like I understand dementia or anything like that. But I do know, again, in line with Rec 8, that our physical guidance is telling us certain things, and when ignored, it creates maladies. Mm-hmm. We're talking about your mother, my mother-in-law. There's a similar component, an overlap, and that is that need to control for whatever reason. For whatever their insecurity is, whatever their story, everybody's going to, but that need to control. And as they get older and they begin to lose control and the brain begins to deteriorate, it gets really, really bad. And so why do we need, again, get your guidebook. Why do we need to control? Where does that come from? Where is the insecurity? How do we bring that back into balance? And when we see these things, like, why do I need to prove? Why do I need to put on a mask? Why can't I be authentic? And when we start to get these things in alignment, life becomes a lot easier, and then the function of our brain having to put the masks on, it makes it a little bit easier. Like, I'm sure you guys at this point see how easy it is. Take this with a grain of salt, but kind of how easy it is to be with me because I don't have a filter. So I've got nobody working overtime trying to censor me because there's no censorship guy. I put him out a long time ago. But think about the ease not having to put up a front.
1000%.
But when you constantly have to put up a front, and then you have to protect that front, and then you get older and it gets harder, it could drive you to insanity.
Yep. And in a sense,
Right?
too, what we're talking about when we talk about our moms and these things who are passed on the other side, it's almost like an adult having a temper tantrum. So that ought to tell you where their emotional guidance system or their emotional maturity was at, which we are all coming out of that. Like, we see it clearly, and we're not fooling ourselves anymore. So in this space, and our children now, they're benefiting from where they were. Oh, we want to do this, or we don't want to do that, or I can see how that's hurtful. So I feel like, in a sense, we needed them to do certain things.
Oh, for our growth?
For our growth, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm being real careful about that, because I mean, some of us had it really tough, and I don't want to, abuse or whatever. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But
Yeah, you don't want to take away from their pain.
exactly,
Yeah.
they went through stuff, but at the same time, we're standing on their shoulders to do better,
Yes.
and then our kids stand on those shoulders to do better.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I remember in that same conversation in the gallery where my mother came through to Michelle and said, "I liked your brother better." She did say something to the effect of, almost like, not that she did me a favor, because it wasn't that flippant, but because of my circumstance, look at you now. And I remember in that moment being angry. I'm like, I'm not like this because of you. I'm like this despite of you.
1000.
But now a few more years later, a little more wisdom, I'm so smart now. Now I can really, really see it with removed eyes and be like, yeah, all of those circumstances created the diamond that I've become. And it's hard to, when we still carry pain bodies, it's difficult to look at it that way. So you're right, you don't want to take away from somebody's pain. But the more a person puts these pain bodies to rest, layer by layer by layer, and becomes more objective in their perspective of their circumstance, they can see it is these circumstances that create the diamonds that we become.
1000%.
And my mother, with all of her warts, that relationship is why I'm able to be here and assist others in their growth. So thanks, Sal. Appreciate it.
And before I wrap it up, I just want to go back to the 8th recommandment and talk about food, substances, actions, or neglect. We haven't even heard from Max, but people who take substances to numb it, people who eat extra or don't eat to numb it, right? It's not only too much food, sometimes it's too little food. Is it working through the emotion so as to, I guess you have to recognize what you're eating through or what the substance is, what you're hiding before you can actually get to the root of it, right? It's going back and doing the work through here as to, is it family, is it emotional, is it whatever it is that you're eating, not eating, substance, smoking, whatever you're doing.
Yeah, what am I avoiding? What am I numbing? What am I distracting myself from?
It's being alert to what your body is saying and really getting to it. Sometimes it's taking all those substances away to really get to the root of it, and that's where the pain comes in.
1000%.
If you can't numb it and you can't eat your way through it and you can't hide it, you're stuck with you. You got to go through some work.
Yeah, and people should really know it's not just about the food and the substances. It's the distraction of social media. It's impulse buying. It's hoarding. It's all of these things.
Keeping people in our circles that we know are not good for us anymore.
Yeah.
That's the top
And
one.
it goes back to the attachments. It's what are we attached to?
All right, so we got to talk to you before we wrap it up.
I've been quiet because I know I have a lot of work to do, and I think I carry a lot of grief, and I also don't want to start crying again. But shame, I feel like it always goes back to your childhood, and I was in an accident and my dad passed away, and I think I carry survivor's guilt.
Yes.
That's what I meant to say, not grief. Well, I do. I guess I do carry grief. That isn't actually, I guess, wasn't an accident. But yeah, because so my dad was a pediatric neurosurgeon, and he operated on little kids and saved a lot of people's lives. And so sometimes I feel guilty that I made it and he didn't. And I came prepared this time. So yeah, I just feel overwhelmed with the amount of work I have to do, because I do often numb, and it's not substances really anymore. So I moved down to Florida and went through treatment because when I was 20, I was using substances in a terrible way. And so I was totally sober for 10 years but I feel like that was just the beginning. Like that was just taking off the initial mask and now I just still feels like I have more work to do. And I don't know, sometimes it's almost annoying coming back to the same thing over and over again. It's like, am I ever going to get over this? But no, it's not a matter of, I think, getting over something. It's a matter of
Moving through it.
with it. Yeah.
Moving through it.
Yeah, finding purpose.
Yep. And putting it in its place.
Well, it's interesting because we talked about it isn't about healing. Sometimes it's about learning how to deal with what you're going through. And it doesn't make you worse of a person. Sometimes it makes you a better person because you'll be able to talk to someone who's going through it, and all of a sudden you went from having all this grief to relying on somebody who's carrying that and how to handle it. So there's a purpose for everything that you go through.
Yeah.
I agree.
You know, and
it's a catalyst.
And the loss of your dad, I'm sorry to hear that. But like they said, you know, you're in a safe place. And it's interesting because I always look at healing as a house. And the first part of healing is opening the door. And you've done that. Now you're in there and there's a lot of rooms, a lot of places. You know, people laugh at all the little nuances that you have. And I always ask you, are you 12 today or 11? But there's a lot of reasons for the other things that go on. And you're in a good place. So, you know, don't shed a tear for you. Just make sure that when the next person comes along and they feel like you hand them that tissue, because that's really what your message is going to be.
Yeah, that's what all, it's Ubuntu. You
That's
handle
true.
your stuff, then you assist somebody else. It's like we're all kind of reaching out to one another. That's why
Passing
I'm
the
so
baton.
passionate about what I do, because we're here to help one another.
1,000%.
Well, and like we started out talking about energy and a lot of negative energies, but I feel like this place is, you can do the opposite. You know, you can shield yourself from negative energy, but then you can also, like here, there's so much positive energy, and so I kind of try and let it, like, you know, like.
Fill
Wash
your
over
cup.
you.
fill your cup with it.
Well, we love
Absolutely.
having you here.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Chapter 8. Moving on to Chapter 9. What's next, Dana, next week?
Chapter.
We're almost done.
Yeah, we're almost done. Find it?
I shall not become so myopic in my perspective of what is that I can no longer see beyond the discomfort in which I presently reside.
Yeah. So big picture. So chapter 5 about contentment is being able to be in the moment, and this is the opposite. This is being able to be in an uncomfortable moment, but to see the big picture without reacting.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, more to come. Get your book at ubuntufishgallery.com, UBUNTU. I say that all the time to people now, UBU, and then I go NTU, and they go, what? Anyway, check it out. Next Wednesday with Dana Sardano. We're going to take a commercial break. When we come back, Dawn DeMarco book of faith stories. I really think she should host a show about shoe stories. Just saying, we're going to have to get a camera on these new babies she's got on. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to stop playing small and step into your highest self? This isn't just a book club. It's a call to action. No fluff, no excuses, just growth. Actually, growth with some super cool people with a shared intention. Join us live at the Ubuntu Room on the Brooklyn Cafe Show Wednesdays at noon and become the greatest version of you. For more information, go to ubuntufishgallery.com. UBUNTU fishgallery.com.